Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today I wanted to talk about sketchbooks with you and my black and white inks and all that sort of stuff. So let's crack on, let's roll the intro, let's see what happens. Okay, as I said at the start, I wanted to talk to you all about sketchbooks. Now, over the years, I, like everybody else, draw in sketchbooks, journals, that sort of thing as we go out on trips or even on our day-to-day studies. And I am no exception. Although I am really naughty, I buy loads of sketchbooks and I use a bit of them. And then I go somewhere new and I want to start with a fresh new sketchbook. And so I've got loads of these half-filled ones. And that's a bit naughty, really, to say the least, as well as being very expensive. And the storage room for all these half-empty ones. So I just wanted to show you some of the things that I've done in a couple of my sketchbooks, not much of it, not too many, but I wanted to do a little bit of drawing and I wanted to cover some of the inks that I use and some of the ways that I create tonal pictures in my drawings as well as using color. So without further ado, let's get on. But before I do, let's just thank all my subscribers as usual. Thank you for the support of the channel. That's fantastic moving forward. And if you're not a subscriber, you know what I'm going to say. Please consider subscribing. Doesn't cost you a thing to do that at all. Really helps me out and helps the channel grow. If you like this, if you get to the end of the video, and I hope you do, and you've enjoyed the content, then please give it a like and also add a comment. I'll always read them and I'll always reply to them. And there's also my Patreon. There's loads of tiers to get involved with. Doesn't cost you very much. Lots on offer. There is also a private Facebook page for all my patrons to interact with me and each other. That's growing and it is a very active little community. And it is well worth seeking out. And for, as I said, for a very little monthly payout, $5 or $10 at best. And on top of that, there is my website. My website is offering more and more products. Apart from originals and prints, it is also offering you Zoom demonstration evenings, paint-along evenings that you can get involved with for £12 a ticket. Book it, buy a ticket, and see you on the evening in question. Lots of different topics in oil and in watercolor, so one of those may well interest you. So take a look at those and get involved if you'd like to. And there's also downloadable content that you can buy directly from my website. Become a site member and you can download this for silly money. I think it's $9.99. I think there's one on there at the moment that is just £5 for over an hour's content of exclusive video for you to enjoy. Enough of me doing my selling bit. Let's get on. I just want to talk randomly about my sketchbooks and some of the ways that I create black and white media within them. Okay, let's crack on. So, sketchbooks. As I said, if I could turn the camera around, I've got so many on the shelf, and partly some have got one or two in. Depends where I've gone and what I've been doing and how long I've been there. And how involved with actual plein air painting in oils or in watercolors I get involved with and giving myself enough time to create something in here. But here is a little gull that I was done once at St. Mawes in Cornwall. And I'm never a big fan, I like these, but I'm never a great big fan of spiral bound. They get bulky, these get twisted, and sometimes they don't work as well as one would expect them to. But there's not a lot in here. In fact, I can safely and honestly say there's only one in there. But there you go, that's at least one in there. This is another sketchbook that I've done over many years. Some pictures here from Pin Mill and some of the barges. This is from Brancaster, Morstan, actually looking towards Blakeney and Blakeney Church. In fact, some of my videos, and I'll put a link if it's on YouTube, I'll put a link above so you can go and watch that, feature the sunset of this one, and so that might be worth looking at. This is Thatcher's Rock, I think they call this, in Torbay. It was just a simple ink and wash. I just wanted to describe the rock out there and the water. This was high tide, really interesting bay, because when the tide went out, these rocks that you can just see the tops of, they're gigantic. You can walk and you're looking up at the tops of them. You're walking between all these big monolithic rocks in the sand or in the mud. And yet here, they're very just the little peaks at the top that you can see. It's amazing the height of the fall of the water on this particular area. Anyway, that's it. This is my local one. It's a very rushed job at the end of the day, trying to describe something a little bit from Venice. Great Dixter. Don't ask me. Battle of Britain weekend. There was a hurricane that was sitting there. Just some messing around bits. My local beach one morning with the dogs just playing around. This one here, this is actually Rye Harbour and the jetties that you can see here. Now this is done with an ink that is not totally waterproof. So if you get it on there and you can get it moving with a bit of water, and you can make some lovely pigment changes within the ink. And it can be really, really interesting, but don't shut the book too soon. That will happen. All right, areas here, Dungeness, very much the same idea, where we've put the ink on, or where I put the ink on, and I've then sort of just played around with some water. And you can see the date on this one, and that's always a good point. Always date your pictures, always date your entries if you can. I don't always do that, but you should do, because it's a great way of looking back and remembering. And so this was done in June, just after my birthday as it happened, in 2016. And this here is a viewpoint from Farthing Corner. Not that you would know it from looking at that sketch, I've got to say. I know where it is, and I can identify these hills in the far distance. Not a problem. Another nice view from one morning's dog walk off my local beach. A stormy day. I just felt that it really worked to do that. A little ink study and then just a little bit of water over the top. Some cloud forms over the bay. I enjoyed doing those. I enjoyed seeing the interaction of the watercolor. And from a little Pochard plein air box that I have my watercolors in. That's interesting. That's the interior of my gallery. I don't know why I sat and drew that. I did. And Dungeness and the lighthouses again across the bay from where I live. Very simple sky and clouds, and it does often work. So that's, you can see, it's half empty. And I'm going to use that one today and add to that one. This one is one that I took to, I think I actually took this to my first, or no, some of my subsequent St. Maur's trips down in Cornwall. I love that. I've got a gallery that represents me down there, and so it's just nice. And these are just little ink studies of various aspects, looking from the harbour pretty much, almost probably outside the gallery, where I often sort of just pitched my stuff up, did a plein air, but did some sketching. And this is some more. This is Falmouth Castle and a couple of yachts that were in the bay. And I was looking through these, and this has inspired me to do a film. I did a full-size watercolor of this, which I filmed the other day, based on this picture. Well, not totally, but the reference I found for this and this picture, and I used it to create a full-size watercolor. I've got to edit that. Not sure whether it's going to be on YouTube or on Patreon or as a downloadable exclusive on my website, but it'll be out there in one of those areas. I know it was a long film, so I want to make sure it gets the right exposure. This, however, is using different products. Let me just show you what I use for these. I've got everything ready to show you. This is what I take with me when I'm out and about. This is a little pen set, and I also take a set of these. These are what they call permamarks, and they are from Winsor & Newton, and they come in a variety of shades. Now you've got black and through various guises of grey to a very pale or warm grey. And I use those often when I'm out doing a little plein air tonal study. If I've got a nice job to do, I just want to check those values, then I can do a quick study, because these are blessed with the fact that they have a fine point, and they also have a wide point, tapered wide point, so you can use the tip of it or you can use a broad mark down. So they're really, really handy. The thing about them is, though, that if you use them a lot and you're in a dry atmosphere, the inks can dry up pretty fast, and you know, they're not cheap to buy, and so I think that they can sort of run out on you at the most annoying times. So they're good, but they are limited good. All right, but they are great for giving you tonal shift. Now, using markers, using pens is a very different matter, because this is going to deliver a black mark for you in however way you do it. Now, I use a couple of types of pen, and these are from one company. This is an earlier one. I don't think they actually make this one now. They've gone to these ones, and these are a company called Noodler. Noodler is an American company, and basically what they've got for about 12 or 13 pounds a pen is a pen that can actually be stripped down and any parts replaced. It's easy to fill it up. Let me just show you that. I won't actually do it because there is ink freshly in here, but it is literally a plunger. And if I show you that, it's a very much just a plunger, and it will draw up the ink. Now, the inks that I use, and the reason why I have an older pen because the nib action is slightly different, but I predominantly just use these ones. And I use two types of ink. I use Noodler's own ink, their own black, and that is almost waterproof. Not quite, almost. It can move. I think it's pretty much, once it's dry, it's pretty much permanent. But then I use another one supplied by the same company called Artemis or Artramentis. Should have read that first, shouldn't I? This, however, is document ink. This is very much different. This has another catalyst hardener in the ink itself, and that will make it waterproof. Very much the same way as this ink is. This is Pelican. I've had this for 30 years. I haven't used much of it. I don't know where it come from, actually. It just ended up in my kit, and yeah, it's just so much of it. And but this you have to be careful of because it can end up drying up and causing problems to nibs and siphons and stuff like that in the future. So be aware of this. It will dry up very hard. So I tend to use this one, although I have one pen charged with each, and I know which one is in which one. So that is for the purposes of drawing. But when you use these inks, if you catch them quick enough, you can, like I showed you just now, play around with that black ink and let it flow, and always carry with me a little bit of water and a couple of brushes that I can just play around and move that ink if I want to. So that's the inks that I use. Now turn the page to these drawings. Now these done at the same time. These are using a very different process. These are using these water carrying cheap. They are cheap, and I've seen more recently. I went on to one of the well-known companies that sells a lot of art materials, and I see another main company selling a water-loaded or a water reservoir pen brush that will deliver a black mark. Now I fill mine up with pure acrylic black ink. You can use several of them. There's the Magic Color. I have got FW, which is a Dale Rowney product. I'm not sure who make this one. They're all very much the same thing. They all deliver a black ink. What I do like to do though, and I don't do it with all of them because not all of them do this next color, but FW, black is really good. But I try and mix mine with this one, which is the sepia. This is sepia brown, and I put the two together about 50-50 as best I can, and I mix them and put them into the pen, and that gives me a slightly warmer black. Now that's really great fun, and it's well worth considering that. Now these droppers are a little bit too big and bulky to get into here and put the inks in, so I use a siphon. And if I've got this one here, this is one that I was filling these up the other day, and that's just, you can see where there's actually still some ink popping out of there. Be very careful. But that's acrylic ink. And acrylic ink will move. It will flow around all the time it's wet. It's no different to acrylic paint. It will activate with water, but of course once acrylic is dry, it's impervious to water. It is, after all, a plastic binder that adds the ink together, and you've got, because it's very fluid, there's a lot of binder in the ink. If it was all watery, the trouble with acrylics and too much water is that there's not enough binder to join the paint together as such when it's dried. In other words, if you consider a very quick lesson in acrylics, if you take your acrylics down over 80% water to color, you do run the risk of flaking paint later on your painting, especially on the earlier layers. I see a lot of people put very wishy-washy bases of acrylic paint on their white paint, let it dry and move on. But that can flake. That cannot give a great key sometimes if it's too thin. And the ways around that is to use some of the airbrush mediums, which are pure binder but very fluidic, and you add that in instead of water. Still get the same result, but you've got a lot of binder in there, and that will lock the component parts of the paint molecules together. And basically, if you can think about it, that you've got molecules of color, molecules of binder, and if you need two of these to glue into one of these, if they are so thinly spaced, they just can't find each other, and they won't lock up and they won't stay put. So just a quick thought, just to bear that in mind in future. But when you look through some of these and just studies of boats, the working boat down in Falmouth is fantastic. And I went there one September during the regatta, between the weeks of the regatta. So I got regattas each end of the week for both weekends. Fantastic time. The sun was glorious and it was great. And I just kept doing these lovely studies of these working fishing boats from the area. They call them the foul boats, and they are beautiful. Racing along there, you can, if anyone knows St. Mawes, you will know this head area. I know it's got a name. I'm sorry, I don't know the name. This one wasn't. This one was about the dark and light components on constituents on a very bright day. This, however, was more a study on the extreme angle of the boats and the sails when they're racing each other along. And this area here is just coming into this point here. Let's carry on. Study of St. Mawes Harbour, one of the little racing dinghies that they use there, and little hobbyist dinghy, and the St. Mawes buildings, the high street and area behind the slipway, a couple of kiddies or somebody swimming in the water. St. Mawes Harbour, seagull. This is a combination between the pen and the acrylic paintbrush, as it were, the acrylic inks in wherever I put them. I've lost them. I have as well. There you go. It's a combination of that and that to create this. I simply use the thinner pen marks to create the hatching and that on the painting of the bird and the initial drawing, and then I just come in with the acrylic ink to just thicken up some of those marks and lines. This is using the same idea. I've replaced the pricks of light with dark taps. It works for me, but here you can see where I used a bit of water to flush out the paint and make it work for me. And the same with this one. This is again the same area. We've got St. Mawes Castle, I believe that's what it is, and Falmouth Castle, and the river, or the Foul River, that runs up through the middle of the two peninsulas, and a couple of the boats suggested that are racing and around the area. I think that's all there is. So it's just to give you an idea of how sketchbooks can be made. You can add watercolor, take a small pochard box of watercolors with you with a pen, and if you think about it, if you had a couple of these, and I say a couple, and the reason I say a couple is that if you're working some watercolors in these happen to be the just one brand. These what do they call these again? I keep forgetting. Moleskine, well-known brand. The paper in it is okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. It'll do the job, and it'll take a watercolor quite well. But you can get better, but you will pay more for the better, as it were. But I've used these a lot. I have loads of them, and I have other brands which come in from time to time, and I keep adding to my array of half-finished sketchbooks. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to complete a little painting using some of the materials that I've done. I've chosen a little photograph of the lizard, actually, in Cornwall, and a new friend of mine who I hope she doesn't mind me giving a shout out, because she's a tremendous artist, and it's Melanie Chadwick. And if you don't know her channel, please check out Melanie Chadwick. She does a lot of plein air, and she does a lot of sketchbook work, and it is great. It's really worth seeing. Lots of colour, very vibrant marks and shapes, and I would thoroughly recommend take a look at her channel and subscribe to it, because it's a great, and she does the most remarkable films. The thing that people call, in addition to the painting, like B-roll, which is where additional bits of footage. She is most excellent at doing that, and she takes you on the journey around Cornwall with her, and you just experience the whole atmosphere of not only what she's actually doing, but also the environment she's doing it in. So well worth a look and well worth subscribing. Anyway, enough of that. Hope you don't mind, Melanie, for me doing that, but it's just a lovely channel. So anyway, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at the rocks of the lizard, and let us find my pen. There we go. I'm just going to use this pen. This is the noodle ink in this one, and I'm just going to quickly sketch in some of the rock. And I am very scratchy when it comes to this. I don't tend to be very fine. I just like to scratch, scribble. I remember when I was a child, well, yeah, I was a child at school. When I was at my secondary school, and we had religious studies, as many would do, of course. Our school was no different. And I have to admit, I wasn't so much into the religious studies. But as a younger child, my grandparents bought me a beautiful Bible with some wonderful painted colour plates suggesting various parts of the Bible being depicted in the narrative on the page. And I kept that, and I still have it to this day. It's put away because it's getting pretty worn, and I've always loved it. I've always enjoyed it. And I'm going to take that across to this page a little bit more there. Could have brought this whole thing a little bit further over, but I didn't. Never mind. Just take that nice and level, of course, because that would be level. And then we've got this great big towering thing behind this. Anyway, I forget what I was saying now. Yes, this, and I didn't enjoy doing the essays about the religious studies on the topic, but what I did do is I enjoyed copying some of these little plates in the Bible itself. I did copy them, but I didn't copy them in such a way that they were totally as per the drawing. I would scribble their form. I would crosshatch, scribble, scratch around, and create lots of little marks that would then suggest the imagery that I was trying to convey by copying what I'd seen. But yeah, anyway, that's how I come to play around with this sort of drawing. I just love it. I love the freedom that it offers to be able to just come in and scribble and get away with it. I say how to get away with it. I don't know if I get away with it or not. But there we go. And now I can come in and I can create lovely little bits of shadow. And drawings like this really do not have to take so long, but they can, for a very short period of time, suggest so much. And I think that really is very, very important when you're learning to sketch and draw, and to keep little areas like this going, little pads and sketchbooks working for you, that you learn, and you learn to précis, you learn to a little bit of visual shorthand to convey what you're trying to convey quickly and accurately. And I think that really is a big important part of sort of this sketching. You're learning because you are visually looking, you're seeing, you're examining your subject. As I'm doing now, I'm checking the drawing and I'm coming down probably a little more accurately than I would have done as a 13-year-old scratching in a notebook given to me by my teacher. But nevertheless, it is still a little bit of visual shorthand that I can convey to you that we are looking indeed at a whole heap of rocks out there into the sea, and what they are basically. As I say, these are a set of rocks. If you were down near the lighthouse, the lifeboat slipway, and where a couple of fishing boats rest up underneath the massive cliff above you, then you look out at that point and you will see these stacks of rock out into the water. They go further that way. I should have actually brought this way actually, but I didn't. Never mind, not a problem. I just want to create the forms, and then we can go back in and create the seas and everything else around these forms. Now you could do this with the thick pens, the paint pens, the acrylics. I just chose these ones to do and convey this sketch for you today. And if there's time, and I don't know, I will do another one. And if it doesn't make the video too long, I'll try and show you one using the actual pens, the brush pens, and showing you how they work. They are very, very cheap products. As I say, these days, I don't even know if you can buy these anymore. I don't know. Actually, you should. These are actually, I've just seen the name on the side. I didn't realize. These are actually by Pentel. So it's a well-known pencil pen company. So one assumes that you can still obtain them. I'll have to look around. If I can find them or any of the others, I'll put a few links in the details underneath this film, and then you can sort of source them yourself if you want them. You may already have them, of course. It doesn't matter. It's just giving you some idea. Just coming in, there's a lot of darker rock as it descends down towards the waterline, and the light dry area has been exposed to the sun longer, and of course this damper stuff underneath is where the tide's been up, and you've got different colors of rock showing as a result of that. So that's pretty much the rocks done. But now how do we interpret everything else? Well, I could quite simply put on one of these tonal colors. Now I could use quite a warm gray if I wanted to. Not that end. Let's look at using the blunt end, the thick end. This is quite fun. And we could just put in some nice suggestions. This warm sky, it's quite brown actually. When you put it against these other colors of dark, they look very, very brown. This is a warm gray in actual fact. That's what it's billed as. Thing is that it will go into your paper. You must be aware of that. The chances are if you use it too much, you see here, you will not be able to paint much on the other side. You can, but it will be obviously affected by what's through there. Whereas you use these markers here, these brush pens that contain acrylic ink, and you don't have to have just black. You can have any color you like in there. All of these colors, Magic Color and FW or Dale Rowney's version of the acrylic ink, do a massive range of colors, 33, 40 different color shades. So you don't have to have black. I just happen to like just using black and maybe black and sepia. So let's look at this now, and let's put a bit of chop into our water. Now I'm going to leave some deliberate little bits of white, and I just want to suggest white water and little taps here, just lots of little taps and very close together, so that we got a sense of distance working back towards these rocks. But as we come down here, we can suggest that the water is getting choppier, and it actually, let's just come back up here and put a high line through there, which is suggestive of our horizon line through there and through there. But yes, you can actually make very, very fine little marks through the back, way up in here. But then as you come this way, then your marks become bolder, bigger, and more separated, more apart, so that you give a sense of greater depth and distance between the areas of the foreground and, of course, the middle and background. So we create a lovely sense of aerial perspective. And at the end of the day, forgetting that little area there, all we've got is black pigment. All I've done is I've used black ink in one form or another to deliver a black mark in one form or another to create a sense of scale and distance. I'm using the white paper as my highlight, of course. I'm using the black marks to give me a suggested heavier, watery mark right up to when we get in here. Great big dollops of paint being delivered and doing it like so. Come back this way and just change how I deliver it and just get very much finer. You can hear my finger now scratching on the wood, controlling the level distance between my paper and the pen. So I think there you get the idea of what's going on. You can either carry on with that one or stop. Let's just go back to this one. Let's put a couple of little yachts in the background there going through the scene like that. Couple following each other. There we go. And there you have one quick little study of a rock at the end of the lizard. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll go and do another one. I'm quite happy to do that if there's time. I use this because it has been spoiled by what's on the other side. And if I put any of that on this side, it will wreck this one. But it's just to show you. It's just merely an example. Let's go in now. Let's just find another quick subject and try and make it very much different to the first one. And very much this is photos, or these are photos from my very first trip down to the area. And I really did love Cornwall. I went to Africa for the first time. Quick change of subject. Went to Africa for the first time and it bit me hard many, many years ago, back in the mid 80s. I had a love affair instantly with Africa. Well, I actually had the same feeling in my gut when I first arrived in Cornwall a few years ago. I haven't been there before, and not that I remember anyway. And I went there as a result of taking my son for his first days at college or university down in Falmouth. So I went on and extended my trip there, and I sort of had a week or two down there painting all over the place. I just so enjoyed it and I fell in love with it. So anyway, I digress. Let me just do a picture now, which is one that I love to do. Often I've painted many versions of this. And this is St. Michael's Mount, just off of Marazion. And I'm going to use this ink now. This is the pen, and I'm just going to use it to do a very quick, snappy little painting or little sketch of the church or whatever, the whole thing, the abbey out there on the mount. Let's just quickly draw that in, try and put the key points, the salient points that make it obviously identifiable. So let's just take a little bit of care the way we do that, else it won't look anything at all. There's something quite tall there, just put that in. Just looking at the general shape, and then you come down from the side of the building. I'm not trying to put in any detail, I'm making it almost a silhouette, Coming down here, a little bit of a rise in there. Then it comes down this angle, but then you've got a tree that is very noticeable. There's a lot of white space between it where you can see sky holes as it's down into the side, another small one very similarly there, and then it continues down to the shoreline almost, with lots of little trees here. And I think there is a row of houses which I'm going to suggest in there somewhere, and come all the way down to the causeway, or what you can see. This point it's quite high tide, so you can't really see anything of the area that you can get across during the course of the day, but you can see little bits of rock that suggest where it all goes. There is a little harbour over there, and boats will take you across there. It's not able, I don't think you can able to walk across it. I'm pretty sure that's wrong, but if I'm wrong in that, then please somebody tell me in the comments. I won't be offended. I don't know all these things, and you know, I can get it wrong the same as the next person. So there's the end of it, very much through there. And let's just come out this side with the rock. There's quite a few sort of heavy rocks on the end there. Let's just make sure this goes up a little bit more of an angle like that. This is pretty much all trees, so we can just take that all the way through there. And we've got the shape of St. Michael's Mount. Now the buildings, I'm not trying to suggest windows or anything else. I'm just scribbling. This is just me making reference notes that I can take home with me and create another painting further on that actually has something to say and can pay reference to and heed to this sketch that I made. This will go home, or would go home with me had I been there on the day, and this would have formed some of that reference material, backing up with sketches, photos and all other things that I've got. A couple of buildings through there, let's just tap those in. It's a little tree there, let's put that in, and quite a few buildings right on the end here. A couple of chimneys, a couple of angles to the roof, and a couple of suggestions of windows in there. It tells me that it's a very small building right there, and a little wall off the side. Let's just make sure that's all nestled in on the sea wall. And let's just take this, keep your horizon line level. I've got this habit, I'm working at a funny angle, so I'm going to probably make this dive down a little bit. But these are some of the rocks that are sort of poking out of the water at this point, and they travel all the way back in there. There's one or two coming out this way that you don't see much of them. They're just there. Then of course you've got the high line, the horizon line through the back there, like that. Try and keep it all about right, and take that through there, and an extension. Again, you can put obligatory boats in. I seem to be putting tons of yachts in my pictures these days, but there you go. A couple of yachts on the horizon line, give you some idea. What else can you do? Well, you could actually put in a couple of suggested clouds like so, and then what you could do very, very quickly before that dries, get some water and just play around with those marks and just create a bit of a sky. You're not going to get rid of all that ink that you've just put on, but it doesn't matter. It's not about that. It's all about creating the feeling, foreboding in this case, because we've got a very heavy sky that could well have threatened rain. Well, I've got to say this before I finish, that on this particular visit, the sky is very foreboding for very good reason, because I was painting away and I didn't notice a huge thunderstorm that was building up behind me. I was sitting here painting this scene of the mount through at this point, and all of a sudden the heavens opened, lightning flash, claps of thunder. I ended up taking my jacket off and throwing it over my pochade kit, my oil painting kit, just literally threw it over the whole thing, whilst I stood in the rain and got absolutely soaked and frozen. I've never known a torrent of water just come down the way it did, but it did, and yeah, I got caught for that. But my painting survived. A bit of paint on the inside of my jacket from the mixes, but never mind. That's all part and parcel of having the fun of painting. If I wanted to now, I can just simply come in here and, well, let's carry on with the same pen. I wanted to describe how to put that in. There's nothing stopping you while this is wet. Adding some heavier marks, you can come back in and it will bleed. It's no different to using a bit of watercolor. But let's just look at the shoreline. Let's just put in suggested of some waves hitting the shore through here like that. Just little bits and pieces of information that are suggesting to the viewer that there is some wave action here coming into shore. Nice little angle too. Using that angle really works because it gives a sense of there's, you know, distance going on as this goes away from the viewer. So something like that is all you need to do. Maybe one or two little taps of waves that are starting to form out further from the shore like that. Doesn't need a lot. There you go. All right, enough done, and we have second drawing finished. Now I'm not going to do any more because I expect this video now has got way too long. But if you've enjoyed this little insight into creating some marks in a book when you go out, let me put this to you as well. Let me suggest to you that maybe put a little pen, one of these noodlers, easily buyable on the internet. You can buy that, and you can buy a bottle of ink for silly money. It doesn't cost much to do. And you can buy, I don't know how much these are today. Bear in mind they're Pentel. I'm sure you can still get them. And a bottle of ink, I think, like this is only about £5 or £6. So with these few instruments, and maybe if you want to go further, a little cheap old brush, little old watercolor brush, doesn't have to be special, and maybe a couple of, if I can open them up, get in there. I'm going to make this a quick video. Couple of pencils like this, and a putty rubber like that. It doesn't take much. Most of this will fit in your pocket, and you can take it out there and you can scribble away and record life around you. You can scribble away and record precious moments that mean something to you when you go visit somewhere. Even if you just do one sketch when you sit down on a park bench, have a coffee or a cup of tea and just scribble something, people going by you, whatever. All of it is several things. It's note making, it is creating marks, and it's learning, it's practice, it's gaining confidence. It's all of those things. But above all, it's a wonderful visual record of what you've done and what you've done in the past, especially if you date them and put them as places. So I'm going to leave you with that thought, and maybe you'll give it some consideration and buy a little bit of kit and just have some fun. It doesn't matter if nobody ever sees it. Just have some fun. So on that note, I'll leave you all in peace. Take care, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in next Friday's video at 3 o'clock. Don't forget that. Don't forget the Patreon. Don't forget the website and the Zoom demonstrations. Book your ticket. Have a go. Take care. All the best. Stay safe. Bye-bye.